Hello, and welcome to Philosophy Fools, a bi-weekly podcast where a young father and old bachelor talk about life, philosophy, and staying curious. This week, Nephew Josh and Uncle Greg continue exploring Seneca's On the Shortness of Life and talk about what exactly is the shortness of life. What's the difference between leisure and just killing time? How do we value time? And being strategic about what to do now and what to do later. Hope that sounds good, because that's what we're doing.
Hi, I'm Josh.
Hi, this is Uncle Greg, and we are Philosophy Fools.
All right, guys, just a quick reminder on why we are doing this podcast. We are here to just explore some philosophy as just a couple normal guys. We're going to try and relate our findings to our real lives and see if you or us can get any practical use out of it. The philosophers of old and new can teach us a lot, and we hope our conversations here may give you some insight into your own lives, as we hope it might give us some insight into our lives. All right, Uncle Greg, we're continuing our conversation today about Seneca's On the Shortness of Life. Let's just jump right into it.
Okay, sounds like a deal. And just to get us started, I wanted to do a quick recap of what we covered last week. And essentially, we went through our initial impressions of On the Shortness of Life, and we covered a couple of topics. One is about having a life's purpose, and the other one is about the idea of deferring or putting off till tomorrow what you should do today. And both of those are covered in the text. And I think that what Seneca is trying to do is really just give some practical thoughts around that much broader thought, which is, you only have the life that you're given. And whether it's long or short is pretty much up to how well you use it. So does that sound like where we were at last week?
I think that's where we were at and where we stopped off.
Okay.
This week we are going to go ahead and start. I mean, I was thinking, and I think you were thinking that we would just go ahead and start with what is shortness of life. I mean, that's the topic of the book. That's the name of the book. So, I mean, what was he meaning by that?
Well, when I pulled out I pulled some quotes from the text itself, and a lot of it really revolves around what your realization was last night, which was, hey, when I'm on my deathbed, how will I think about my life? And in the specific point that Seneca is making is that it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of that time. And that in the final analysis, we are forced at last by death's final constraint to realize that it has passed away before we knew it was passing. And I bring that specific point up because we actually did cover this last week, but that's the real framework of I believe what Seneca is trying to get us to think about, which is that that life is constrained by death, and that you need to use that awareness to figure out what you want to do between the time that you become conscious to the time that you pass away. That's just a way of sort of getting us into the discussion of the next point, which is what?
Yeah, exactly. Like on the shortness of life, I was having a conversation yesterday with my wife kind of about this, and we were talking about, I mentioned this, like, what would you do on your deathbed? Like, how would you look at your life? And one of the big things that we were talking about is we were talking about how you mentioned that it's a paradox. Like you want to live like there's no tomorrow, but you could live for 60 years. So you also want to kind of be safe, and you want to live a life that you can kind of live for a while. I mean, you don't want to just be reckless all the time, but you want to kind of make that choice. And I think that's something that most people are either on one side of the spectrum or the other side of the spectrum, and they don't balance it very well. And for myself, I mean, I definitely have been focusing on that balance, and I think that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And things like leisure for us, and leisure what Seneca was talking about. Do 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 I want to sit on the couch and watch movies for 10 hours? Well, I mean, I have done that before, but is that really living?
That is
So, I go ahead.
no, and that really brings up the reason that his use of the term leisure jumped out at me so much is believe that people have a bad. It's a word. Words have meanings that people have different kind of interpretations of, and I think that Seneca's interpretation of leisure is something very different than what I actually discussed this with a friend of mine years ago, and he was trying to explain to me that like sitting around smoking dope and watching TV was leisure. And I was like, it is not leisure. That's just hanging out. That's wasting time. And it doesn't mean that there isn't a place for time wasting, but that I believe that leisure in Seneca's context is that he sees it as a enriching activity, whatever that might be. And so I think an example would be like for me, I enjoy writing and I enjoy creating visual art. And for me, those are very enriching experiences. For other people, it could just be like maybe cooking or it could be gardening. It's whatever a person knows that they derive a lot of value from.
Do you
Exercise
think?
is a good
Yeah, I
example.
was gonna say, do you think fitness would probably fall in that category? That would be like a big thing for me, or maybe golf right now is a big thing for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's things that give that add to the richness of your life, and I think that the pieces and parts of that kind of thing is that it's probably a thing that you don't know a lot about to begin with, and that you learn either through research or through personal action, bit by bit, how to do something better over time, and that's what makes it enriching.
Now, do you think though? I mean, what about watching movies? I mean, do you think that like in making that choice to give myself 2 hours on a Saturday to watch a movie that I will thoroughly enjoy, and like it, I feel like it would enrich my life, even though some people, like, if I wasted 10 hours watching movies, that would be a different thing. But having one movie that I really want to see, I mean, that's going to make me happy. So why do you think that would be, leisure in Seneca's definition?
My belief is the differentiator is decision. So, like a person who sits in front of a television, turns it on, and just the TV washes over them and their brain just sort of winks out. The exact same behavior if you're videotaping you making a decision. You know what I really want to watch? Kong versus Godzilla. And I'm going to watch it at 4 o'clock. And then sitting down and doing that exact same thing, it's the decision that distinguishes those two things from just sort of sloth or laziness versus a leisure activity.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And I think that applies to a lot of life, which is, and this happens to me a lot. As a bachelor, as a person who has 100% control of his own time, I am hyper aware of the fact that there will just be moments where I just sort of look up and go, oh, whoa, 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 wait a second. I've been watching Law and Order reruns for 3 hours. What the hell is going on? And it's something that in another context, I might decide to watch 3 hours of Law and Order. The real difference is that it just happened instead of me saying it was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I mean, I like that decision, and that it's all about your decision. Like, even me as a fitness guy and a personal trainer, I love to eat cake and cookies and things like that. But I mean, I can't just sit there. Well, I can just sit there and eat a whole bag of cookies, but I mean, I really choose now, like, okay, on Saturday night, I'm gonna have a couple pieces of cake, and that's gonna be awesome. Or I'm gonna wait till my daughter's birthday and then I'm going to have some cake instead of, I don't try and buy bags of candy and keep them at my house because I know I will just eat them all the time without really thinking about it. And, and so I think that I guess you can relate that to a lot of parts of life.
It is, and I think that is actually that's a very good lead in to the next part in the outline we wrote out, which is the concept of valuing time. And the reason that popped out to me, and actually the two ideas that Seneca brought up that I was kind of highlighting was valuing time and wasting time. And the reason that those two things are kind of related is that if you don't value time, then you really can't waste it, because you can't waste something that doesn't have any value.
True, true.
And so in this context, Seneca says, well, he was talking about two people who are exchanging the idea of somebody requesting somebody's help or somebody's time. And the sentence that jumped out to me was, both of them fixed their eyes on the object of the request for time, neither of them on the time itself, just as if what was asked was nothing and what was given was nothing. And here is this idea of, if you imagine the way that we treat time, similar to how we might treat, say, money. And, that's an old cliche that time is money. But I think that what he's trying to say is other folks will treat our time like it's nothing, particularly if we treat our time like it's nothing. And so we've got to have a concept in our own heads of what our time is worth. And that's not a money worth, it's a personal value. Like it's, I'm trying to think of an example, but well, if you can imagine somebody who just says yes to everybody all the time, neighbor comes over and goes, hey, can you come help me with the fence? And hey, can you help me with the car outside? There comes a point that if you say yes to all those things, you're basically saying to yourself and to others that you don't value your time.
I feel like at work, like this happens a lot. Like people who are asking for meetings, about just random stuff. They don't really. Maybe that's what they're thinking about. They're thinking about the subject of the meeting more, and not the fact that that this meeting can literally be done in an email or something like that. And they just want to fill up their time in their on their schedule, maybe, or who knows their real reason for it. But they're not really thinking about the time they're using. They're just thinking about, oh, let me put this on my schedule. We can chat for a few minutes and maybe we can talk about our day, but it'll put an hour on my time. So it's looking like I'm doing 8 hours of work that day. And I don't know, that's what comes to mind really about this sentence. Certainly about the neighbors. But it is something that I think I'm going to start thinking about more when people ask me to do something or I ask somebody else to do something. If for instance, let's just say this podcast, like I almost, yesterday I really was like, man, I should just cancel this podcast. But I know that you put in time for it. You have this on your schedule. And so I need to value your time, just as much as I would hope that you would value my time.
Right.
And I think that that's something that I probably learned from this book.
Well, and it's a broadly speaking, and I think that in terms of Seneca, it's an example of living the long life, or living a life that is valuable. Is that a big part of it? Is that you have to assert your value to yourself. And what you just said is a perfect example of something that it's not spoken directly of in Seneca's work, but it's the idea of respect. It's a respect for yourself and a respect for others. I mean, there were times this week where I was like, you know what? I am not going to re-listen to that podcast. We can wing it on Sunday. And I said, no, Josh wants to, he really wants us to be able to explore these ideas. So, what's it, so it's important to you, Greg, to set a good example for Josh and to do the right thing for yourself.
It's funny that we're both having almost the same kind of struggles
Yes.
during the week, coming up to this, but that's almost like with everything in life.
Exactly. And I think the important thing for both of us is that at the end of this, that we step back and very much like the days when you wake up and go like, the last thing I want to do, go to the gym. And that you sort of force yourself to go to the gym. And then all of a sudden at the end of it, you're like, oh my God, that was great. That was the best thing for me to do. And so
Exactly.
hopefully at the end of today's podcast, that's how we both feel.
It reminds me of I went on a pretty long hike yesterday, and we were we were in the middle of the woods, like going straight uphill, and we were just like, okay, we need to stop. But literally in that point, we can't stop because we are in the middle of the woods and we have to walk 3 miles back. So, but anyway, that was a little off topic, but that's what it reminded me of.
Well, yeah, and it is, but but those are both decisions that we made this week where we both thought about the other person and about ourselves at the same moment. And so we were both engaged in that process of making decisions about our time.
Absolutely. And so we're talking about valuing time and we're talking about wasting time. And you were talking about how he was talking that what he says is in guarding their fortune, men are often close-fisted, yet when it comes to the matter of wasting time in the case of one thing in which it is right to be miserly, they show themselves most prodigal. You were talking about how they waste time with money. I thought that was interesting because people do just they're like, okay, I have all this money but I'm not going to spend it or anything, and they never think about that their time, like, okay, like nowadays you can order something off of Amazon and get it sent to you, or you can spend 2 hours and go to the store and get that same thing. But so what are you doing? Are you so I always think about that, like with having a family, is it better for us to spend those 2 hours as a family and go walk around and have an experience, or is it better for me to just click buy on Amazon and have that shipped, and maybe we can have a different experience with those 2 hours? So that's kind of a battle with the wasted time for me, because it is a good experience to go to the store, but I can get the same thing in one click. So I sometimes that's kind of a struggle for me to just make that decision, like as a family, because it could be a good experience.
Well, I think that the key word there is decision. That and that it's a great example of how there isn't one decision to make. There isn't like, I am never going to use Amazon ever again, or I will always use Amazon. That it's really going to be a matter of how in those moments you consider like the value to your family and to yourself for that matter. And the point that of both of these ideas of valuing time and wasting time is all about death. It's all about it's only when we forget that we're going to die that we tend to both devalue time and waste time. And I don't know when this tradition started, but have you heard of memento mori?
No, what is that?
It's like a memory of life. It's carrying or keeping in your house some object that reminds you of death, like a skull. And it's something that was designed to because it's nearly impossible to keep yourself in that headspace. It's designed to have a physical object around so that when your eye falls on it, that you're reminded that you will die someday, and that it's not the trick is to have that notion, that awareness of death, be something that isn't a fearful thing, just a practical thing. And that's where I think when people have a lot of anxiety towards death, they're being impractical, because for whatever reason we all have to have our own relationships to death just because it's inevitable.
I
And
guess that's a fairly normal thing for a lot of people to think, is kind of to fear death, even though kind of the goal that Seneca is trying to state here is that we should be prepared for death at any time, really. And so I guess that I guess that's kind of a good idea to have something like that as a reminder around.
Yeah, they have even like coins that are just have a skull on them that you carry in your
Hmm.
pocket. But so it, as a matter of fact, I'll get that term and I'll send you a link to it just so you can see all the different ways that this has expressed itself over time. And
Very cool.
it's a, but it, again, talking about being practical, like the idea isn't to be, and it's the reason that I think the Stoics don't, they spend very little time on the moment from death beyond because there's nothing you can know about it. So all of these, so when they talk about death, they are imagining it as just an end point, and that whatever you're experiencing now, your life that you're experiencing now, it is absolutely going to end in death. When, how, where, those are all mysteries. But the fact that it's going to be over at some point is the part that makes it so important to value your time, because it's in the wasting of time that you'll have regret.
And I know that's what a lot of Stoics preach gratitude. I mean, because every day you should be there's this Stoic named William Irvine who is actually like he's around nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
and he teaches about that. And in his teachings that I've listened to, he talks about, he'll just be in the other room, and his wife will be in the other room, and he'll yell out, "I'm grateful to have you in my life." And then his wife knows that he's just been thinking about his wife, like maybe dying or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And that's like a stoic form of gratitude. And so they know that's what each other is thinking about. So I always thought that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the keys to all of that is that gratitude be authentic and not performative. And it's something that I see, because I see a lot. What we live in an age of social media, and social media is like, oh, I have an attitude of gratitude, and it's just like they just toss this stuff out in what I consider to be a performative way. That in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you seem to have an awful lot of time to be on the internet telling me how grateful you are, and it seems to be not a very, from my perspective, it's not a good way to show you're truly grateful for life.
Yeah, I mean, if you do practices like some stoic practices, like when you think about, if you think about your own death, like really think about it, like sit there, close your eyes, and think about being on your deathbed for a few minutes, or something even worse. I mean, I know this sounds harsh, but if you think about something like your family leaving, or anything like that, but you really think about it, and see it through in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that can build in your mind a stronger form of gratitude, like when you're really visualizing it, because you can kind of trick your mind into thinking whatever you want, really. And when you perform a practice like that, it can be very powerful. And I started doing that a couple years ago, and it can be really powerful in changing how you think about your day.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that that's a good thing to think about. And it's not just posting a meme on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. It's getting deep into your mind about it.
And it's really, the best times to reach for that is when you're at your most annoyed. Like, say, if your child is like driving you crazy, like she just keeps asking, like, why is the wall white? And you just go like, I can't figure. It's in those moments that you got to say, well, wait a second, I get to be here and be annoyed by my daughter. That's awesome. Like, that's when the
Yeah,
gratitude is real.
absolutely.
So that is
Very good point.
it is. It's tough because I think that we tend to we try to prepare ourselves for really great things to happen. I spent a good amount of my life trying to reconcile myself to my own death. And when my parents died, my brother died, those were all things that, even though I had given a great deal of intellectual thought surrounding the notion of my own end, I didn't give the same amount of thought to the ends of others. And I was not prepared. Well, and I don't know that you can be prepared, but that the reality of that loss was very different than my thoughts of what that loss were. But that it, having thought about it before, at least it wasn't a surprise.
Right.
And so all of these things are, I think, what the Stoics are trying to get at. And you had mentioned the seeming sympathy between Stoicism and Buddhism, and they do have a lot in common, particularly this idea of attachment. And that's where you really get into that problem of fearing loss, and fearing the loss of your own life or fearing the loss of others, is that you are attached to them being there, or that you're being there. And so, and the reason they consider that to be kind of an evil is because it tends to make you not truly be grateful, because you aren't, it goes back to this idea of paradox. It's exceedingly difficult to be 24 hours a day, 100% humble and grateful. That doesn't mean that it isn't a thing that's worth shooting for, but it does mean that we will tend to be like, well, this will be here tomorrow, everything will be fine. A year from now, I can deal with this. And this goes to the idea of what we were talking about in terms of leisure and decision, is that even though Seneca talks about deferment, or the idea of putting off to tomorrow what you would have you do today, is something to be like, something not to do. The reality of life is that there are things in life that you may value highly that you, for whatever reason, you have to defer. And it can be something like, I'm trying to think of very specific examples. My mother is an example of somebody who, when she started having children, and they knew they were going to have a ton of kids, that she said to my father, I will stop teaching and I will care for our children until the last one is in kindergarten, and then I go back to my career. So
That's interesting. Like right now, being a father of young children, my wife Amber and I have this a similar conversation about deferment quite often. I mean, like, so when your kids are super young, like we have an 11-month-old, there's just things that we want to do, but it's very, very hard to do. I mean, we could do some of them, but it's very hard to do with such a little kid. And so we build these ideas up in our mind that, like, we want to, I mean, just a simple thing like, okay, you can definitely bring like a 6-month-old or 11-month-old to the beach, right?
Yeah.
But when you bring a kid like that to the beach, there's lots of different worries about, how much sun, you can't go in 90-degree heat compared to, like, I would love a 90-degree day myself. And so, or like we talk about going to amusement parks, like we love amusement parks. And so we're always talking about these future events, and we just kind of, I have to be like, all right, we need to take a step back here. Like, these are just things that we want to do, but we're going to have to defer them, for 4 or 5 years. And let's just focus on not worrying about those and kind of being a little bit more present, and instead of planning all these things. And now it's important for us to know that we're going to do those, but to know that that's just not part of our life right now. Like, but it will be a part of our life at some point.
And I would encourage you both, because it's great that you're having those conversations. And just depending on the reason deferment is problematic in Seneca's mind, is that if you get hit by a bus, you'll be like, oh, I regret not doing X. And the strategy to get away from that kind of response is to have those conversations just like you're having right now. And but instead of them ending with, well, maybe we'll do it in 2 or 3 years, that you guys just put a little bit more of of a spin on it, like saying, well, when Charles is 43 inches tall, we can go to the amusement park, or whatever the height is for going on a ride. And
It's
that
42 inches.
there you
I've
go.
already looked it up.
And so something like that really makes it something you can look forward to. And at the same time, the issue is that you can make a decision about it and be comfortable with the decision, so that you aren't revisiting it inside your own melons, both you and Amber, that you just go like, hey, you know what? We got to wait till he's 42 inches. And that's, so anytime that it comes up in my mind, I'm going to be like, oh, look, I know what my deadline is. So I'm not going to think about it.
Oh, that's really smart.
And it, because it makes it real. And it's kind of like that deal that my mother made. Like that's a hyper specific thing. This last child. So they have to decide that I am the last child in that family. So that's one thing. And then the last thing is that kindergarten. So being able to have that very long-term plan, I think during that period, my mother knew that if she died or whatever during that period, she wouldn't go like, if I had only gone back to teaching, because she had made a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense, because like we do talk, we were so future based, I was talking about the future all the time for a while, and now I mean we still do a little bit, but we're focusing more being in the present, and we always talk about we are deferring everything, and that is smart. I mean, like the 42 inches, or we say one thing we do say a lot is once Charles is in kindergarten, or once Charles is in school, because then we'll have the time, and he'll be walking and old enough to talk with us and everything like that. So, but that is a really good point, and I think that's something that I'm going to bring to the table more often now.
I think it's a good idea, just because it takes vague ideas and makes them very concrete. And the bottom line is that, and we discussed the idea of a value hierarchy last week. That's the reason you have value hierarchies, is so that that hierarchy runs from 1 to 50, or however many priorities you have in your life. But the reason that number one is in the number one slot is because it gets to win in a conflict with the other priority. And the same thing happens as you work your way down the priority list, is that you're saying, you know what, it's far more important that we have a stable income as the kids are growing up than me being able to mountain climb. But that doesn't mean you're never going to mountain climb. It just means that you're going to defer that until after that need is passed.
Yeah, we were thinking about writing our bucket list, not like an official bucket list, but just a things to do, like a things to do list. And
Yep.
Now, after we're having this conversation, I feel like at the same time we're making that list, I should probably make like a little bit more official value hierarchy for our family while we're doing that list. And I think doing those two things at the same time could really, map out our life, or at least not map out our life, but map out how we make decisions over the next 5 or 10 years of our life. Because I mean, I've always made 5-year goals or 10-year goals or whatever, but making the value hierarchy where you have an idea to shoot for, but your values can change a little bit, and you can just use that to make the decision for your goal, because your goal might change a little bit, but you can use that value hierarchy to shoot for all the things that we want to do.
Exactly. And being able to, because, and that's exactly what it is. It's a tool. It's not a fluffy idea. It's I think I've discussed with you and Amber the idea of having a why list for working, and so you have an idea of what number one, number two, number three is. And it's because everybody gets frustrated at work from time to time, and they may just like have this boiling anger at their boss or whatever, and they may instinctually like go like, oh, I probably shouldn't go argue with the boss, but they don't really know why that is. And if they have a list that says feed my children, and you go like, oh, right, number one, feed children, and that is that it helps to put that momentary anger into some kind of context. So that's it.
I feel like Yeah, I feel like in my youth I quit a few jobs without going through that in my head. So
Oh, hey, you and me both, but it's mostly when you have the responsibilities where other people are looking to you for food, for shelter, for things like that. That's when you have to take it more seriously, because when you're younger and it's just you, then sure, quit that job. Well, okay. Well, looks like we've gotten we've run pretty long today. We still want to do our family catch up this week, so I think we'll do. I've got two
sure.
last ideas, which are distractions and self adoption, and we can just push those to next week, and then we can
Okay.
wrap up our discussion of Seneca and his whole thing.
Sounds awesome. So, I mean, what have you done this week? I mean, any entertainment news? How is your fitness journey? What's going on with you?
Well, your old uncle had like a particularly annoying week last week with a tooth extraction and a kidney stone showing up. So a lot of my
That
journey
sounds
was just me
miserable.
feeling like I was going to die. So that as problems go, it was as mellow a problem as you could have. I did get back into the gym for the first time since I've been fully vaccinated for COVID, and I want to. There's two things I'm trying to do. I pay for this gym, so I might as well use the gym, and instead of doing all the exercise at home. So that's number one. And number two is I want to push my exercise back to like the 6 a.m., 6:30 time slot. I've let it slip a little bit towards right, like around, I've let it slip to like whenever I feel like doing it, which is not
Yeah.
the best. That's not the best approach for me, because I find that early morning workouts really give me great sleep in the evening.
Okay. Are you gonna go or continue? I know you're mainly cardio based. Are you gonna continue doing a lot of cardio?
Oh,
Or are you gonna be doing
I'm just doing my regular thing. And again, regular thing right now, a 3-year-old child could be doing what I'm doing. So it's essentially, I just want to do a 6-day mild anaerobic routine, sort of doing major muscle groups every day, not in different major muscle groups every day for 6 days a week, and then 40 hours of aerobics after that, 40 minutes
okay?
of aerobics. And it's just I, right now, my real focus is just being able to do it, is just being able, because when I did my legs the other day, that was the first time I had done any kind of real massive leg movements in a while. And it made that time on the elliptical machine a living hell. So it's going to take a while for this to get me. I'd say at least a couple of weeks until I feel like, hey, I'm just going to do what I want to do in the gym instead of I'm going to do what I can do in the gym.
Or hey, I'm just gonna make it to the gym. I mean, that's always the best goal is just to get there.
100%. So that's my fitness thing right now, is just getting back into, because I feel pretty comfortable wearing a mask, being back in the gym. And so, and a lot of my excuses up to this point have been that I was scared of going back in the.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you were at home from your tooth extraction and the kidney stones, did you watch anything good?
What do I see this week? I've been on a very odd. I had to go buy a new television, which was, there was a cloud forming in the upper left quadrant of my television, and my TV is a good 10 years old. So
Sure.
and it's gotten a plenty of use. And for about 3 months now, every time I watch TV, I just obsess about that cloud, because and you only saw it when there was a light background. Everything else, it was perfect television set. And I was like, oh my God. You ever hear of the Edgar Allan Poe story, the Telltale Heart? And it's
Yes.
just, this guy imagines he's hearing a heart beating, and it drives him crazy. That's what was happening
Right.
with this stupid television. So I was just like, okay, look, this is ridiculous. It's $300. Let's go buy TV. So I ran down to Best Buy. I bring this up only to show that as much as I sit around and think about, like, oh, let me think in these lofty terms, I was in Best Buy and I was like, hey, do I need a 55-inch television? Which basically would be taking up the entire wall of my apartment. It's ridiculous. And so I said, no.
Hopefully you said yes, I need a 55-inch television because those are awesome.
but my hands were on the box and I was rocking it back and forth like, yeah, 55 inch, sure. It's ridiculous because I don't like the idea of living in a space that seems like it's my roommate instead of my TV. So I got a nice 43-inch TV. I'm very happy. I say that as a way of saying I've been using the new TV as an excuse to kind of run through different films to see how they look on this higher resolution screen. And so I've seen, God, did I tell you about Hard to Kill?
Is that the De Niro movie?
No, that was Midnight Run. No, this
Oh,
was
no.
it's a terrible film. To be clear, bad movie. And it stars Steven Seagal, bad actor.
Okay.
But it's this perfect distillation of 1980s action movies to the point that I really think that they may have just bought this movie off of a shelf someplace labeled 80s action movie because it's hard to explain. Bottom line is that if you have a taste for the crazy, Hard to Kill with Steven Seagal really earns its stripes. One of the things that struck me as I watched it was the secret villain of the movie was plate glass windows, because there wasn't a single plate glass window that lived through this movie. They got shot, they got things thrown through them. There was a scene where there were a bunch of guys shooting at Seagal on the ground, and then they just picked their guns up and shot the window next to him for no reason, except for smashing glass is cool.
Yeah, it sounds good. And maybe it was like the first year that they made that kind of glass. They got a good deal on it and they just put it in the movie for that.
No, what this was a number of years, because remember that we didn't really, even though there was cable and stuff like that back in the day, nobody produced movies for cable. You just took movies and put them on cable. And so there was this whole sort of market for, you had a high level films like Die Hards and your Lethal Weapons, where you had good actors, good directors, and a lot of money. And then you just started to walk down this ladder to things that kind of were like that, but were made by people with much less talent and money. So it's just, yeah, and that's on HBO Max. If you ever want to watch Hard to Kill, do not assume that that's going to be a leisure activity. That's just a stupid activity.
Now, how's your HBO Max connection? My HBO Max so it's do you have a lot of buffering issues with HBO Max?
Particularly for things that are new, for things that I might be competing for bandwidth on, because it's for older, like for something like Hard to Kill, it's a great experience. You just go in, you go out. But definitely, like I was watching, I think like the Nevers last week, and I was trying to rewind it, and it was bad.
Yeah, HBO Max, it does have the best content, but it's been frustrating me with any of their new movies. It's funny, on my Xbox One, the buffering will be horrible, and I'll have to I have a Google Chromecast upstairs. That's just basically what that does. It just streams from your phone, or a cast from your phone to the Chromecast.
Yeah.
And I have to watch HBO Max on that because I guess the connection is better. And so for me, being in the data center world, like what I think about that is that literally there's a fiber that goes to the Microsoft servers, and then there's literally a fiber that goes to the Google servers. And I think the bandwidth on those specific fibers is just a little bit worse. I mean, I think like that's what I see from it, because it's miserable. I was watching, I rewatched Godzilla versus King Kong this week, and with terrible buffering on the Xbox One, and it was fine on the Chromecast. And then last night I actually caught Mortal Kombat. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw 15 minutes of it.
Yeah. Okay. So Mortal Kombat for me is like, so I love that game so much. And I probably played it for, hundreds of hours when I was young.
I remember you and your
that
brother
movie.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. And so the movie was sweet for me because it was all nostalgic, and I knew all the characters when it came out, and I was like, oh, that's this person. But man, the storyline there was just no story to it. It was just like these guys were fighting, then these guys were fighting, and it was just like, okay, cut to the next fight, cut to the next fight. Which, I mean, it was a fun action movie, but it was a terrible. It was pretty bad,
Okay.
but I enjoyed it.
Well, exactly, and that's really all that matters when it comes to taking some time out to watch something new. And that's but I don't want to get into a technical chat here, but have you tried the apps on the television directly?
Yes. The
Oh,
I have a Samsung TV upstairs. Well, no, okay. So in my downstairs TV, no, I don't have apps on the TV.
okay,
So I just have apps on the Xbox One. It's like a 12-year-old TV.
yeah.
But actually the Samsung apps don't work very well.
Oh, they don't.
No, no,
Okay.
not at all. So I don't know. The Google Chromecast works great.
Well, good, good. I'm glad that's coming together. And clearly, you and I, we've got to raise our threshold for our entertainment, because if all we watch is King Kong and Hard to Kill, it's not a good look.
Well, I'm just saying. So I did watch the 1933 King Kong that
Oh, you
you
did.
recommended on the last episode.
Mhm.
Yes, and I liked the movie a lot. I really did. And I even thought I couldn't believe how good the stop action was for 1933. Like it was cool. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how they made like the dinosaurs. And I mean, of course it was a little cheesy, but like you were saying last week, if you put yourself into 1933 and where you've never seen a movie, like no movie has ever come out like this, and you see it, like it was a good movie.
And they really did a great job of getting kind of an acting performance out of the models, in the sense of, like, you kind of got a sense of King Kong's emotion, which was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I loved it when he kills the dinosaur and then plays with his jaw
Yeah.
to make sure he's dead. Hey, he's really dead. But yeah, well, I'm glad you saw that, because it's an interesting experience, because it's almost so artificial that it becomes real because it's so fake.
And one thing about those movies is that, it was something about the score, like the music, that really got me into the movie and really made me feel the movie more than, just the CGI nowadays. Like that really, that I don't know, it just made me feel more into the movie than like just the fancy blowing up and fighting of King Kong and Godzilla and things like that of the movies now, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I'm really glad you took the time to see that, because it's as you now know, it's a really kind of cool experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So is
anyway,
there any more entertainment? I mean, there's Star Wars is coming up this week. May the 4th be with you.
yes,
Um,
and I'm
so
and I,
maybe we'll talk about a little Star Wars next week.
yes, absolutely. And I did. I'll put in a pitch for Mayor of Easttown on HBO Max. It's it might be worth waiting till you can binge it. I'm not sure, but it's really good. So
Okay.
okay. Before I let you go, anything new with the family this week? Mine.
So nothing new. My kids are on their second week of preschool slash daycare. And it's crazy how much they've already been learning. Like I don't know what it is. I mean, because they do so many activities and so many learning activities. And as much as, Amber and I think we do a lot for the kids, and other family members do a lot for the kids, which they do,
Yeah.
when it's structured from a teacher who knows how to do everything from like teaching physical things and teaching mental things, and really developing the children from an early age.
Mhm.
Even in this short period of time, I have seen a dramatic change in my kids, which is pretty amazing.
That is awesome. And are they
Yeah.
enjoying the process of going away from the house and coming back?
Adeline loves it. Adeline like is so excited to go to school, and it's just cool. I'm not the one who pick my Amber picks up our kids every day, but I was able to go to school and pick her up one day, and she just like, "Oh, daddy," and like jumped in my arms and stuff like that after school. And she just goes like, "I had such a great day today." And like, so, it's pretty awesome to see.
Oh, that's wonderful. I can't wait to see if I see any difference in her when I come out for the birthday party and see if anything's
Sweet. Yeah, absolutely.
sweet.
Absolutely. And besides that, Amber and I had a 24 where I'm actually in the middle of a 24 hours with no kids. My parents took them yesterday at noon, and we're gonna pick them up today at noon. And Amber and I got to enjoy a 7 mile hike, which I mentioned earlier, which destroyed us. I can barely move today. And we had an awesome dinner, and we enjoyed a movie that we could actually watch the whole movie in one sitting, which almost never happens.
Oh,
So
that's
that
great.
was awesome.
That is wonderful. I'm glad you guys are doing that. And when are the kids coming back today?
We are picking them up in a couple hours. So
Okay. Well, squeeze as much fun out of the next couple hours as you can, and or at
I
least
think I will do that.
that is awesome. Well, are you glad we didn't cancel today?
I am definitely glad I had fun, and I always enjoy talking to you.
Absolutely. And same here, pal. Okay, well, that's it for Philosophy Fools this week. I guess we'll see each other next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We are the Philosophy Fools.
Woohoo!
All right.
All right, take care, pal. Hey, folks. Uncle Greg here. Just wanted to thank you again for listening. And be sure to join us next time as we conclude our exploration of Seneca's on the shortness of life. And a special thanks to Ted Onulak and Exit 10 for our music. You can check them out at exit10band.com. That's EXIT10band.com.